What happened to make the U.S. Army go after The Rock for $6 million of an $11 million marketing deal? Well, today, I, Jeff, will explain what happened to you. If you don't know who Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson is, I'm a little bit envious of you because it feels like he's been all over everything for like the last 30 years. Before his wrestling days and before he became a TV and movie megastar, The Rock had football aspirations, which eventually led him to the sticky situation he ran into with the U.S. Army. Before we get ourselves into that sticky situation with the Army and The Rock, let's dive a little back into The Rock's football career and how he became the owner of a football league today. The Rock grew up in Hawaii, and being the son of a professional wrestler, he felt like he was being picked on and tested from a very young age, which made him a very tough person, but he didn't play football right away as a young child. Dwayne didn't start playing football until high school, and he credits his desire to play based on a run-in he had with a coach and teacher named Jody Seawick. At this point in Johnson's life, he had moved from Hawaii and was living in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and he played defensive tackle for the high school. By the time he was a junior in high school, which is ages like 15 to 17, it can really vary depending on when your birthday is and if you were held back or whatever, he was 6'4" and 230 pounds. That is a man among boys at that age. With his immediate skill at football and his high motor, he realized that this could be his key to getting a higher education. He put all of that focus towards football, and it paid off with a whole bunch of scholarship offers from places like UCLA, the local Penn State, Clemson, Florida State, and many more. He really wanted to go to one college, and that was a very famous college in the late 80s and early 90s, and that's the U, or the University of Miami. Sadly, the University of Miami did not offer The Rock a scholarship, but he decided to cold call their recruiting coordinator and made his pitch. Dwayne got in touch with head coach Dennis Erickson and eventually accepted a full ride to the U. He made such an impression with his incredible size and unteachable work ethic that he was the only true freshman to start on the 1991 Hurricanes team. This was backed up by a statement by the LSU National Championship head coach Ed Orgeron, who was the defensive line coach for the U at the time, and he was quoted with saying, "He had tremendous get-off. He was strong. He could use his hands. He was tough as nails, and he worked his ass off." Later on, he was asked about Dwayne, and he was quoted as saying, "Dewey was a hell of a player. I thought he had a chance to be an All-American." Which, if you didn't know, the All-American list is a list of all the best college players around the country at their best position. Think of like the All-Star game, but for college people. Tragically, on the last day of two-a-day practices, which is when you practice 2 times in a day, Dwayne shredded his shoulder, which required surgery. So the Miami team converted a nimble but strong and big tight end over to defensive tackle, and that guy's name was Warren Sapp, future NFL Hall of Famer. For people out there who have no idea about football and stuff, Warren Sapp is arguably like a top 5 defensive tackle of all time. He played for a long time and at a high level for a very long time for the Raiders and the Buccaneers. He was a very good player and a bit of a dirty player too. As you can imagine, if someone with that much talent takes over your position, you'll have a hard time cracking back through into the starting lineup, which Dwayne really never did in the rest of his time at the University of Miami. This lack of playing time now was really weighing on Dwayne, and it was adding a lot of frustration into his life. He was feeling just out of place. He lost his position, and teammate Kevin Patrick was teasing him about it, and it led into a fight, and let's see how that fight went. Witnesses and Dwayne himself have both said that during the fight, Dwayne just wanted him to shut up, just wanted Kevin to be quiet, so he stuck his hand into Kevin's mouth and tried to pull his tongue out, but his tongue was, quote, so damn slippery, so he couldn't get it out. By the time they were done fighting and a few minutes went by, they were already hugging and making up just like men do. Johnson never reclaimed that early promise he had during his true freshman year, and before that injury, he ended up finishing his career with 78 tackles and 4 sacks. His dream was still to play professional football, but he went undrafted in the NFL draft. But he went up to the CFL and played for the Calgary Stampeders, but after 2 months of being on the team, they cut him, which effectively ended his football career. Wah, wah, wah. Before we can get into talking about The Rock owning a football league, we have to talk about the original iteration of the XFL. Which the XFL was the brainchild of Vince McMahon to turn the NFL, or the No Fun League as he called it, into something more fun. It was introduced on February 2nd of 2000 by McMahon himself and the then NBC chairman Dick Ebersol. And once it aired, it had a blazing start on the ratings. It blew everything out of the water, but that quickly declined as the product on the field was pretty mediocre. The idea behind it was to have a little bit more fun, so they had an opening dive for the ball, so they'd have a ball set out and two players would have to run at the ball, and whoever got the ball, that team would get possession to start the game. Well, the very first or second time they did it, people got hurt, so they had to stop doing that. There's a lot of things like that, but there also were some things from the XFL that were brought over to the NFL, like that sky cam you see going down the middle of the field in an NFL game. That started in the XFL, but actually started somewhere else, but the XFL made it better, and the NFL took it over. So there are some things that came out of the XFL, but sadly, the XFL closed their doors after the quote, the big game at the end of the season, which actually got renamed to the $1 Million Game, which was on April 21st of 2001. Fast forward 17 years to 2018, and Vince McMahon, who still had control of the XFL brand, said that he was going to aim for a relaunch in 2020, which if you've been alive since 2020, you know what happened in 2020. After 5 weeks of operation, the pandemic officially shut down this relaunch of the XFL. And 3 days later, the XFL declared bankruptcy. You see where this is going? Foreshadowing. Fast forward from April all the way to August, and a group consisting of Danny Garcia, The Rock's ex-wife, Jerry Cardinal, and Dwayne The Rock Johnson came forward with an offer of $15 million to purchase the XFL. The XFL resumed play in 2023 after a 2-year hiatus. During that hiatus, the Fox Corporation relaunched the USFL, so that's another spring league to compete with the XFL. After competing against each other in ratings only during the 2023 season, the two sides, Fox and the group consisting of The Rock, Cardinal, and Danny Garcia, decided to merge the two leagues together to become the UFL. With each side, that group of three plus Fox each owning 50% of the league. And that brings us to the 2024 UFL season. And what made an $11 million marketing deal with the US Army go so wrong? This marketing deal consisted of having logos on the players' jerseys, ads before and after the game. They'd have those in-game things where they'd show a section of Army people, and they'd be like, yeah, this is brought to you by the U.S. Army. A lot of subtle but, in-your-face marketing. Trust me, I watched quite a few games. Also, The Rock was supposed to make 5 social media posts with Army-related materials, but The Rock only made 2 related posts. So at that time, he had shortchanged him. He just stopped making posts after the first or second weeks of the year. At the time of the deal, The Rock had 396 million Instagram followers, which values each of his posts at about $1 million each. And I'm sure The Rock didn't personally make this decision not to post stuff himself. I'm sure it was supposed to be one of his handlers or something. But is there anything worse for your image than not doing something for the U.S. Army and then having it come out publicly that you didn't do something for him? Especially when you're The Rock, you're this hoorah American person, right? But not only did he not make those social media posts, the whole advertising deal with the commercials, the patches on the uniforms, and everything resulted in 0 new recruits for the Army. Yeah, that's right. 0 new recruits from that whole thing. And these games average 1 million viewers each, or right around that. And a review done by the Army Project stated that the partnership actually resulted in a loss of 38 enlistments. Now, the original report came out in July of 2024, and just recently, in January of 2025, the Army came out backpedaling, saying, whoa, there's no rift between us and the UFL and The Rock. No, not at all. Even the UFL president, Russ Brandon, was coming out being yeah, everything is cool, and he even had a quote saying, "We have great relationships still with the Army. General George and Colonel Butler and that whole team." He also said about the situation, quote, "I think we worked through all of that, and I think we're in a good place." And that was said in regards to the Army still wanting that $6 million back from the UFL and The Rock, which is what was stated in that original article. Army marketing spokesperson Laura DeFrancisco agreed with Russ Brandon's statement, even going on to deny any dispute between the Army and the UFL, even though it took 6 months for them to deny it. Though she did say there was no plans for any future marketing between the Army and the UFL. She also said that $6 million amount was never actually talked about when the news officially broke, but all of this feels like backpedaling for me. Both sides have things to gain from having a good standing relationship in the public with each other. The Rock doesn't want to have a dispute with the U.S. Army, and the U.S. Army doesn't want to have a dispute with The Rock because both hurt their image, in my opinion. She also said that it did not have a negative impact on recruiting, even though that other report was from an Army inside thing. I don't know what to believe. Like I said, this all feels like backpedaling to me. In conclusion, I believe that The Rock and the U.S. Army did have a dispute. Maybe the money figure was made up or just guessed in thin air, but who cares? They did have some sort of dispute that took months to resolve. And once it was resolved, they could come out in public and be like, yeah, there was no dispute. What do you guys talk about, you silly gooses? You guys are all just so silly. That's my opinion, at least. What do you guys think? And while you're down there, let me know what you think. Make sure you hit that like button and check if you're subscribed, because I'm Jeff and I'd love to see you around. And also, YouTube thinks you'll like this video. Alright, goodbye.